far as the book, I believe there was a period of time in the 80s where nobody would book this Sheik. That's one of the things the author talked about. What was that heat all about? Was it all having to do with payoffs and maybe competition? Because I know that people that worked for Ann Gunkel, for instance, got some heat with other promoters due to that territory war in Atlanta. But what were some of the reasons behind that?
Well, it was in, the 1980s, was when, Vince McMahon tried to, expand. He was buying up talent. He was, trying to put almost every territory out of business by, like for years, it was just an unwritten rule that, territories would have their TV show and it was put on, for free. And the station made their money by commercials. And the promotions got to plug their shows multiple times during the show, so that was free advertising for them. And then when McMahon came in and started paying TV stations to have his show, well, it pushed the other local territory shows to like 12 o'clock or 1, 2 in the morning, when who's going to watch it then? But wrestling was changing then. The NWA was in disarray. All the promoters, they couldn't agree on anything. Sam Muchnick for many, many years was the backbone of the NWA. But when you had Bob Geigel and then Fritz von Erich, take over, and, they were just looking out for themselves, I think, instead of, looking out for the whole, NWA territories that were around the country. And then the NWA was getting sued multiple times. And some of the guys, heels and baby faces, were brought into court over lawsuits, filed by, I know one was by a guy, Jim Wilson, football player and, so-called wrestling jabroni, that tried to, make himself out as a champion, which he wasn't. But yeah, the NWA was, in dire straits in the 80s, and, they started seeing the writing on the wall, and one by one, guys were selling off their interest in, certain territories, and, territories were getting bought up for, pennies on the dollar. And, that's the way it was in the 80s.
And of course, the Sheik ended up working for the NWA, I believe, during the Great American Bash. He was paid a lot of money. I think it was Kevin Sullivan's idea to bring him in Detroit. Were you good friends with him at that time? And did he ever tell you about his insights into coming in for that?
That was just after I stopped managing him. Wrestling in Detroit was, crumbling. Especially us, doing, mainly spot shows, at local, gymnasiums or, just smaller venues, because if, the WWF TV was on at the time everywhere. So if, people, wrestling fans, didn't notice one of the guys, from back, that they saw on TV, because we didn't have TV then. And that's why, things started to dwindle. If, you had, one of the WWF guys, yeah, you were, drawing big crowds, but, like the Sheiks, the Bobo Brazils, the Killer Tim Brooks, and the Fabulous Kangaroos, and, guys of old, they, if you didn't have TV, you had nothing back then.
That's true, and I understand that he actually held out for a lot of money to appear on that show.
Yeah, I think he worked the one show. I can't remember who it was with, but maybe it was Dick Murdoch or something like that, and worked the show, and then I guess they had a disagreement on money for him to come back and appear at the other one, and he no-showed that. So he was going through a rough time, business wise, money wise. He was losing the mansion. His marriage was crumbling. Just, the Sheik, he was getting older and he wasn't, that main attraction around the world like he used to be. So it's like, just like an old time baseball player, who, hits the 40, 50 home runs and bats 350. And now he's at the twilight of his career and he's batting 210 and he's living on his name. And, that's, what the fans, they still get to see this guy, this Hall of Famer. But, when his career and he can't do what he used to do, it's just the beginning of the end.